The next step in the Barometer project is to create a graph of your data. First, access your spreadsheet in Google Classroom. Next, we need to set up the X and Y variables for your graph. The X variable is going to be the height of your needle in inches. Your Y variable is going to be the pressure reading from the web resource you used, and the unit should be inches of mercury. Now we want to extend these columns to fit our labels. So if you click at the top here by this little down arrow, you can drag that out so that there's enough room for your descriptor. And then same thing for your Y column. We'll extend that out a little bit. All right, now that we have our headers, we need to grab the data. So for the height of your needle, you're going to select this entire column and then copy and paste it with the data title. And then same thing for your pressure reading here. Copy and paste it underneath the title. Before you move on any further, just make sure, because they are switched in order, that the height of your needle that you put in the correct column and then pressure reading in the second column. Now we're ready to create the graph, so you want to highlight the titles as well as all the data and click Insert and Chart from the menu. It automatically should select a bar chart, but that's not the type of graph that we would like. So you're going to come over here to the chart editor, and under chart type, we want to choose a scatter plot right underneath there, so it should change the type of graph that you're seeing. And then we need to edit this a little bit to make the graph a little bit more meaningful. So we're going to go under Customize. The first thing that we want to change is the title of the graph, and then to set up the axes appropriately. So if you click the arrow here, let's simplify the title a little bit. We're going to change it to pressure versus barometer needle height. That is more descriptive of the data that we have on our graph. All right, so we have the title set up. Your axis titles should be good because those were taken from the data table itself. The next option is series, and so if you click on that, we want to get an equation for our line, and so you want to select trend line, and you'll see the line appear, and it's a linear fit, which is what we want, but we also want the equation. So if you go a little bit further where it says label, we want to say use equation, and then it should put your equation with the legend. We're done with the series section, and now the legend, if you click on that, it looks a little bit easier to read if you move the position to the top. Right now it's selected to be on the right hand side, so if you just click that drop down menu and select top, it puts that in a more easy to read format. Next step is your horizontal or x-axis. If you click on that, everything should be fine except we want the minimum value to be 0 because we want to see what the graph looks like when we can see the origin. So you want to change that to 0, and it should update right away on your graph. It still looks a little funny though because we need to fix the y-axis. So if you move down to the next section, vertical axis, you're going to do the same thing. Change the min value to 0. And even though all my data is over here on the right hand side of the graph, it still is a better looking best fit line and display of my data. Alright, so I'm done with horizontal axis, vertical axis. I have my title, I have my legend, and so my graph is looking good. The next thing I want to do, since it's so small, is create a sheet just of my graph. So if you click on these little dots here, you can move the graph to its own sheet, and you can see now you have your graph displayed, and it's its own tab here next to your data. The next step in the process is to take the equation for your line, and you want to solve for both the y-intercept and the x-intercept, and then we're going to add that to our table here. So the y-intercept and x-intercept. So if I go back to my graph for the y-intercept, we're going to set x to 0 and then solve for y, which you can see from my line would be 26.5. And for my x-intercept, same thing, but this time I'm going to set the y value to 0 and then solve for x. That takes a little bit more math, but still pretty easy to do. And I have an x-intercept of negative 42.74 inches. Now, the intercepts, one of them is going to hopefully match up with the height of your needle from the bottom of your barometer. So that's the next thing that you need to do. You're almost done with your barometer itself, but we need to measure the actual height of the needle. So actual needle height. And I'll describe that a little bit more in class, but you need to measure in inches the height of your needle from the bottom of your barometer, and you're going to place that in this column here. Extend that column a little bit. So in making your graph and with your barometer, you should have these next three values put into your data table. The last step in the project is to create a scale for your barometer, which the next screencast will walk you through those steps.